Okay, it's after midnight, almost 1 in the morning. Just got home from watching Deadpool. Gonna record some audio now, gonna record some audio later after I wake up. Put that in the video, because that's what a professional does. Deadpool is arguably the greatest superhero movie that Fox has made. Now, I'm saying that because, bearing in mind, they did make Ninja Turtles 2. They are responsible for that. This movie was so good. It was so good! For a movie that I had been waiting for so long, and I could have gotten burnout from all the trailers I watched over and over again, all the clips I'd seen, the fact that I saw the script, which they did change a few things, and I will be going into that. I loved this movie. I still love this movie. I am going to keep going back several times this weekend, and subsequent weekends, to watch this movie over and over again. In this day and age of digital downloads, why would you ever buy a physical copy of a movie? This is a movie I'm going to be buying the physical copy of, both the standard edition and the director's cut and whatever other special editions they make. This movie lived up to my very high expectations. The action scenes were over the top, wonderfully choreographed, very creative. The jokes were amazing. I can't recall the last movie I laughed so hard at, and I do try and watch most of the movies that do come out. I'm trying very hard not to overhype the comedy, because that's one of the things. If you go into a comedy and they hyped up all the jokes, and then you actually see the jokes, and with the high expectations, the jokes never live up to those expectations, simply because you go into them hype. But, yeah. This movie was hilarious. It was packed full of great action. This is one of the very few superhero movies, in fact, it's the only one I can recall offhand, in which I care about the relationship of the main characters. Because typically, when you go to see any movie, the people who kind of go to see action movies typically don't care about the relationship of the hero and his love interest. This one I did care about. This one felt real. This one, you just felt for them. You got the feels. When Ryan Reynolds said that this was more of a romance, a love story, he's right. You do feel it. It's a superhero movie, but at the same time it's also a revenge story, and it's a love story. It's got a lot of layers to it, a lot more than you would actually think from a Deadpool movie. When I first heard that Tim Miller was going to be the director for this, of course I had to go on to YouTube and look up what he did, because he hadn't directed movies before now. He was mostly a guy who directed commercials. And you have one video on YouTube that he's done, which is a bank heist that's spanning over the course of a block, but the entire thing is like in frozen time, and the camera is slowly panning through the crowd and the mayhem. And that's basically how the Deadpool movie itself opens up. It's Tim Miller's style. Tim Miller did a great job. Both him and TJ Miller, who plays Weasel, everyone attached to this movie did a great job. And I will say this, when you go and see the opening scene, and I don't know about you, but when I see the opening credits at the very beginning of a movie, I don't typically pay attention to it, because really, who cares? And then, as I'm watching it, I do happen to glance over, starring so-and-so and all this. Pay attention to it, because it's not actually proper credits. They actually do put some comedy into it, like starring the greatest human being God's ever made, produced by some asshats, written by the real heroes here. The movie is literally grade A comedy from start to finish. And the post-credit sequence actually is worth sticking around for, I'd say. My only real criticism for the movie overall is that it feels a little bit rushed. It feels like... well, I know for a fact that there's some content that's been cut, and I personally feel like the content has been cut. But I can't exactly go into that too much without going into spoiler territory. So, if you want to know my overall opinion, go watch the movie. If you take a look at one trailer. If that looks like a movie that you want to see, it absolutely is. It lives up to it. It delivers on quality from start to finish. You won't regret it. Now we're cutting into spoiler territory, so if you don't want spoilers, stop listening now. One of the reasons why I feel that the movie feels just a little bit rushed is after Wade Wilson gets diagnosed with cancer, he goes to various locations around the world for experimental treatments. Like, he goes to the Himalayas to some monks to go through some ritual or drink some tonic there. At another point, he goes down to South America to this, like, really shady hospice. And in there's a kid who goes there. He's really shy. The nice nurse there gives him a lollipop, a Chupa Chub, as they're called down there. And the kid gets all happy, and the kid tries to go for another one. And then the nurse, like, gets a really nasty look on her face and smacks the kid's hand. Because you can only have one. And Deadpool's there with his old couple, because the husband also has cancer. Husband goes in, gets put under. The doctor then takes this, like, cancerous mound out from under the table, presents it to the old couples, like, yeah, we got rid of the cancer, we've, like, extracted it, you're good to go now. Takes their money, and then sends the couple on the way. Wade goes in, and then you hear ruckus in the back room. Nurse goes in and is all horrified because Wade is brutally murdering the shyster doctor with a lollipop in his mouth, and he says, "Can I have those Chupa Chubs?" And that's where I got that joke from the Darkest Dungeon video, because they did, like I thought they did cut that out. The part where he goes, because he gets diagnosed with cancer, he leaves Vanessa because he doesn't want to put her through that, much like in the comics. This movie sticks very well to the source material. Then he goes and hops around the world, taking all these experimental treatments, and then he is recruited into this program, which, although is technically the Weapon X program or some sort of offshoot on it, or even though they don't actually explicitly state it, he goes through the treatments and then gets recruited. But in this one, he just he leaves Vanessa, he goes to the bar, he shows his buddy Weasel brochures and each one of the brochures is one of the locations that he would have visited in the original script, and the recruitment guy is already there. Deadpool says, "You're too shady," then he goes back to Vanessa, thinks about it, and then leaves her proper, and goes to the recruitment guy, and then that's when he goes into the program. Now, it's stuff like that where they didn't have a lot of time for scheduling reasons, and obviously they actually make mention of this several times in the movie because of fourth wall breaking. They didn't have the budget to send them to all those locations when it would have just been easier just to mention them in the brochures. Another difference is that a lot of characters from the script have been cut. Like, for example, both in the comics and the original script, there's an actual owner of the bar. I think his name was Patches. He was in the script, and then Patches owns the bar that Wade always goes to, and Weasel always goes to that bar. Weasel goes there because this is a place where mercenaries go, and Weasel is both an information broker and weapons dealer. And then, the character of Patches has been cut, and Weasel isn't so much an information broker and weapons dealer, he's just the guy who owns the bar. He's the guy who works behind the bar. So, they kind of changed Weasel's character, like, very minorly, like, in that manner. And I'm not even, thinking back on it, I'm not even 100% sure if they do call him Weasel in the movie. I digress. Another thing is the character of Ajax. In both the comics and the original script, Ajax is not a mutant, but in this one he is because Fox has a stranglehold on the term mutant, so anyone with superpowers in the Fox universe is a mutant. Ajax, in the original one, he was a product of the program, and as a result, the program was basically designed to create super soldiers, Ajax was one such experiment where he got all of his nerve endings destroyed, so now he no longer feels pain, and thus that gives him a degree of super strength and allows him to, like, fight through the pain that he doesn't feel, but at the same time he becomes a sociopath because now he doesn't feel anything. In the movie, the program is designed to create mutants by having some sort of serum injected into a person to provoke any sort of mutant gene into activating, and the only way to, like, get the serum to work is to have the body experience phenomenal amounts of stress. Ajax's mutant powers that he has heightened reflexes, but the process of activating it, the torture that he had to go through in order to activate it, singed off all of his nerve endings, and that's where he gets the lack of painful sensations from. Ajax also had 3 henchmen in the original script. One of them was this guy named Worm, who was able to snake out these... No, excuse me, his name was Wire, and he was able to snake out these wires from his fingertips, and his specialty was interrogation through torture. There was another guy who was super strong, whose ability was super strength. That character was replaced with Angel Dust. And Ajax's third henchman was a cyborg who was very heavily armed. He had, like, rockets and a machine gun arm. The cyborg was totally cut, and the character of Wire, all the scenes that he would be in were either replaced with a scene with Angel Dust or the recruitment officer, Agent Smith. Let's say, for example, when Wade hunts down Wire to interrogate him for information on where Ajax is, he instead hunts down Agent Smith, the guy who recruited him for the program, and tortures him for the information. Another difference is, in the original script, Ajax and his henchmen go to the bar that Deadpool usually goes to in order to find him, and Wire tortures Weasel for information, and the 2 henchmen then, like, destroy the entire place and kill all the mercs there, just because they're evil. But in the movie, Ajax and Angel Dust go there, and Angel Dust is about to strong-arm Weasel for the information, and then all the mercs in the bar pull guns on the 2 guys, and long story short, they do wind up finding the information that they wanted, and then they leave. They're not going to start a fight because even though Ajax and Angel Dust are really powerful in a fist fight, neither of the 2 are bulletproof, so they leave all the mercs alive. In the original script, it was just Deadpool and Colossus go to the final confrontation, and the final confrontation is in a actual proper building. But in this one, it's a junkyard. And it was... Colossus was supposed to fight the strong guy. Then Deadpool goes in, fights all of Ajax's mercenaries and the cyborg. And that's how Deadpool uses up all of his ammunition. And then he goes up to the top floor and fights Ajax with a combination of swords and fists. But in this one, they fight at the junkyard, and then it's... Colossus still fights Angel Dust, who's now the strong guy, and Negasonic winds up assisting in both Colossus's and Deadpool's fights. Deadpool proceeds to fight most of the mercenaries and then goes up to fight Ajax himself. Another thing that was changed was... They had this really minor... It was a very minor change from the original script where it's... Deadpool was in the workshop. I think it was just called the workshop in the movie. He had this one other guy who he would, like, banter back and forth with, and he would develop something of a bond with. When Deadpool's escaping and the whole place is going up in flames. In the original script, the character, I think, was, like... He had, like, severe brain damage, and he was, like, strapped to the bed or whatever, so... Deadpool killed him as, like, a mercy killing, but in the movie, Deadpool winds up getting pinned to the floor, so he just has to watch as his friend, who's still strapped to the bed, winds up going up in the flames because he can't do anything to help him. And this is something I'm kind of bothered that they did cut out, was they cut out the character of Killbrew. Killbrew is a character from the original comics. I don't think he's ever mentioned beyond the very first run of Deadpool's comics. Killbrew was the guy responsible for all the experiments going on in the hospice. Now, Killbrew was a good character in that what he was doing, he was legitimately trying to do for the betterment of humanity. He was just running these horrible experiments on basically the scum of humanity and, like, killers for hire and people who just didn't have any hope or whatever left. And it was, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. A few people are going to die here and die painfully, but we are on the road to curing cancer and making humans generally stronger overall and curing all sorts of diseases. He just basically looked at humans as nothing more than guinea pigs, and then after the hospice winds up getting destroyed by Deadpool's escape, then years later, Killbrew manages to take a step back and look at his life and, oh my god, I did some horrible, horrible things to people, and it doesn't even matter what kind of people they were, nobody deserves to have lived through the torment that I put these people through. So, Killbrew was actually, like, a complex and interesting character in the comics, and in the script, when Deadpool goes to the hospice for the first time, or, like, at some point during his torment, this sweet little old man winds up going and, like, wipes the sweat from Deadpool's forehead, or, like, the drool from his mouth or whatever, and then he leaves and is never seen again until the very end of the movie, where the same old man sees the remains of the final confrontation between Deadpool and Ajax, and then he gets in a car, and before the car drives off, the driver calls the old man Killbrew, thus setting up the sequel and acknowledging the fact that the old man wasn't just some orderly, he was the guy behind the experiments, and Ajax was just the guy carrying the experiments out, just like in the comics. But that old man is never seen in the movie, so apparently he's just completely cut, or they're going to bring him out of nowhere in the sequel, if they actually do bring him into the sequel at all. And the thing is, I was thinking that they cut that out in an attempt to keep the movie from, like, they didn't want to sequel bait it because Fox, I'm thinking like Fox didn't, they had enough faith in the movie to actually make it, but not so much to, like, promise a sequel. Even though, like, shortly before the movie premiered, they did greenlight Deadpool 2, and the end post-credits sequence does in fact acknowledge, yeah, we're going to be doing Deadpool 2, and Deadpool 2 is going to have Cable in it. So, I'm not entirely sure why they cut out Killbrew at all. Because he's a character I actually liked in the comics. And I kind of would have liked to have seen him on the screen. And the reason for Deadpool's disfigurement is different. In the original now, it's not entirely different. The thing is, in the comics and in the movie, it's his healing factor heals anything after he got the healing factor. So anything that was on him before he got the healing factor, that doesn't heal up. So, in the original comics, Deadpool's disfigured because the cancer is constantly killing off his cells, but his healing factor is healing back anything that gets killed off, so his body's in a constant state of flux, and that's mutilating his body. In the movie, however, he's put into that chamber that, like, sucks out all the oxygen until just when he loses consciousness, and then it pumps the oxygen back in, and then just when he starts breathing in fresh air, then it cuts off the oxygen again, thus keeping him alive in a zero oxygen environment for as long as possible. That device was kept in the original script. But the thing is, they put him into that, they came up with a name for it they actually kind of expressly name it in the script, and I don't think the name is ever brought up in the movie. But the device, because when you're in a zero oxygen environment, your skin winds up boiling up to the center, and that's what it was. That's why he looks the way he does, because his skin boiled underneath his blood boiled underneath his skin, and then his healing factor kicked in and kept him from dying and healed it up, but after the damage was already done, thus causing the disfigurement. But again, his healing factor does work the same in the comics, in which he still has the cancer, but anything the cancer kills, the healing factor fixes. And in the original comics, Deadpool gets his name from all the people who were in the workshop. Back then, in the comics, it was known as the hospice. Actually, I think it was also called the workshop back in the comics. All the inmates had a Deadpool going on, which was a betting pool on who's going to die next. The people who are going through the more dangerous experiments have the higher risk of dying, and all that and some such. Wade Wilson, being the rebel that he is, then positioned himself to be put through the most horrible experiments and then surviving them. And then eventually it was... Long story short is that he winds up going through a certain experiment that should have killed him, but then that's when his healing factor kicked in, and he was able to survive, and then he used his newfound immortality to free everyone from the hospice and destroy the place. And he picked up the name Deadpool because he broke the Deadpool. He was the guy who went through the most... He's the one who defied death the most. In the movie, the bar that Deadpool goes to has a Deadpool because everyone there is a mercenary, and thus everyone has a much higher risk of mortality. And Weasel knows that he's constantly betting against Wade to die, and then when Wade shows up again, and it's like, oh, he's immortal now, so now he's never going to die, so thus Weasel's never going to win from betting on Wade to die. So then he breaks the bar's Deadpool as opposed to the hospice's Deadpool. The main difference between the movies and the script's Deadpool is that the script also had celebrities and not just mercenaries from the bar. And that's where the Amy Winehouse joke came in. But I was thinking that they were going to add a different celebrity or replace Amy Winehouse, but instead they just cut that joke out altogether, so now it's just mercenaries that are in the Deadpool in the movie. Another thing that they cut out was, because Deadpool was supposed to have that gunfight against the Cyborg and the Mercs, Weasel, who was in the script, his weapons dealer, gave him 3 very specific guns. I can't remember 2 of them. One of them was the AA-12 shotgun with grenade rounds. Another was 2 pistols, which had like 3 smaller barrels inside their barrel, so every time you pulled the trigger you fired 3 rounds. And then you had 1 assault rifle, which was described as being so accurate you could double tap the same hole. Instead, he doesn't actually get those specific weapons. Instead, he just gets all the weapons that he owns together and then puts it into a big duffel bag and then goes off to the final confrontation. And they do keep the scene where Deadpool is slowly working through what costume he's going to get. And yeah, if you've seen the trailers, you've heard the joke, why do I wear the red suit? Well, that's so bad guys can't see me bleed. Yeah, they keep that joke in the movie, but then when he's actually going through costume changes, you see, yeah, he did keep the red suit because when he wore a white suit, it just got covered in blood. And then Blind Al says, look, either, what was it, lemon and seltzer water or something like that? Lemon and baking soda or something or other to get the blood stains out, or just wear red. There was one really funny joke that they couldn't have possibly kept in because they don't own the rights to Spider-Man, but it's when Deadpool's trying to come up with an idea for what he wants his mask to look like. He goes to some bargain, like, costume shop, and then goes through and dresses up as various different Marvel characters like Thor or Captain America, and then he pulls out the Spider-Man mask, and then he turns the Spider-Man mask inside out, and thus you get the Deadpool mask. I thought that joke was hilarious. I was kind of hoping that they were going to be putting it, they would keep that joke in there, even though, for obvious reasons, they couldn't, because Fox doesn't own Spider-Man, Sony and Marvel do. So those are all the major differences between the comics and the script and the movie that I apparently care enough to remember offhand. So I'm just going to end the video. I'm going to end recording here, upload what I have. This is going to be a very half-assed review. I'm not going to put too much effort into it, but I'm going to go see the movie again, and again, and again, and I'm just going to give them as much money as I can afford to, and I encourage you not... If you are willing to give this movie a lot of money, please do, but at the very least, treat yourself and go see this movie with some loved ones. Maybe not your grandparents or your older family members if they're a little sensitive, because admittedly the movie is kind of raunchy, but go see the movie. You're going to enjoy yourself, and you'll make me happy because you're getting me all that much closer to being able to see Deadpool 2. Thank you.